The shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, well, the reviews are in, and it looks like most think that we handled the Gina Carano situation with the RFR customary fairness, level-headedness. So appreciate the kudos. Yeah, it's a tough one, you know. There's a lot of passion across all sides, and we know one thing that unites us all as Star Wars fans is that we're very passionate. We love our Star Wars. We all have our ideas of how our Star Wars should work, how it should run. And, I think that that's part of what makes the community very vibrant and exciting. But, there's a downside to it as well. But we try to focus on the upside here on Rebel Force Radio. Great to be back with you all once more for your source for the Force and so much more. Geez, we are a week away from Bad Batch Season 3 premiere, big premiere, so brand new Star Wars content. Of course, Rebel Force Radio will be covering it with our live after shows. We'll be talking about that here in just a few moments. But coming up on this program, we've got some more updates on the Gina Carano situation. So Gina has actually gone on record and started talking publicly about the lawsuit. So we'll have some audio highlights from her. Also, Tim Morrison, we haven't heard much from him lately, but he's made some recent comments about the future of Boba Fett and his desire for a second season. Ewan McGregor also out there seems to be lobbying like this is sort of the thing now. Ever since Sam Jackson started lobbying for a role in the prequels, now everybody says, get on the phones, get the emails out, write letters. Lots to get through. I don't even know if we're going to be able to get through all of this stuff. It's just a great, exciting time to be a Star Wars fan, as it always is. And I know one exciting Star Wars fan. Of course, I'm talking about my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Back for another week of Star Wars discussion here on Rebel Force Radio. And Jason, you said that some Star Wars actors are lobbying for their character to be included in movies or get spinoffs or whatever. And it all kind of goes back to Samuel L. Jackson, Mace Windu. Well, just this past week, Sam was at it again. He spoke to Empire Magazine. They have a great feature on the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace. They spoke to all kind of people. Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, Liam Neeson, Ian McDiarmid, and yes, Samuel L. Jackson. And Sam says, hey, Mace isn't dead yet. He's not dead. So Sam knows something we don't know, because I could have sworn that he got his hand cut off and he got tossed out a window across town while soaking up a bunch of Sith Lightning. So, it's hard to overcome that Sith Lightning. I think that the effects of that are extremely damaging.
Well, they certainly were to Vader. Right?
Right? Oh, he basically killed him, But that's just like overloading his system with current.
But here's where I think Palps went wrong. And I think he went wrong with Mace as well as the way he went wrong with Luke. He likes to play around at first. He likes to increase the amperage of the Force lightning.
Yeah.
Because you see that in Return of the Jedi. He's playing around with Luke. Luke's almost like a mouse, and Palps is like a cat playing with him. And that's when he then finally, he's had enough. And he goes, and now, young Skywalker, you will die. And then, he's really pouring it on. So that is unlimited power style Force energy that he lays on to Vader when Vader picks him up and then all the Force lightning goes on to Vader. We see a similar thing with Mace Windu, where he really launches that unlimited power, and that's finally what shoots him out the window, thus becoming Mace Windu.
Mace Windu. Well, you have to build up the wattage. Like your first blast might not be so lethal. It's just like, here, have a taste of this. And then you build up, like you have to walk before you can run. And maybe that applies to Sith Lightning as well. So maybe the Emperor wasn't toying with him. He was just merely warming up.
Good point. Yeah, you can't turn it up to 11 right away, right? You got to, you'll burn out. You could blow a fuse or something. And that's not good. That's not good. But I meant to pick up this, because I think it's already out now on newsstands, this issue of Empire Magazine. Mm-hmm. I think it's already out. I just don't typically buy magazines, but it is kind of like you with new media. That's me with magazines. What pulls me into buying a floppy magazine is a commemorative Star Wars piece, and not those ones that you see at the grocery store all the time. They're totally unauthorized. But you got a magazine like Empire or what's the other one they used to do? Vanity Fair. These big covers, and I always try to get those because they're big moments. And I wasn't expecting this. At first, I was a little let down because Empire had that teaser that was all over social media. I don't know if you saw it, but it was like the Star Wars Starfield background. And then it had in the, sort of in that a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away font, it said, hello there, ... Mm-hmm. It said revealing tomorrow or something like that. And so speculation was running rampant. What's it going to be? I thought maybe Empire had a big scoop, like new season of Kenobi or something. But alas, it was it's something great because it's all new interviews. You got guys like Hayden Christensen, Ian McDiarmid, all being interviewed, looking back on 25 years of the prequels. It all began with The Phantom Menace.
You can't really apply that hello there line that Obi-Wan's so famous for to just the prequels anymore. Now with the advent of, the Kenobi series. And of course, he originally said it in the original Star Wars. It was Sir Alec Guinness who said hello there to R2. So it's not exclusively locked in, really, to either the prequel era or the original trilogy era. But still, I felt like Empire Magazine's tease was kind of misguided with that hello there, because fans think it's going to be season 2 of Kenobi.
Of course.
It's more heavily associated with Ewan McGregor. And of course, Ewan said it at the very end of the final episode of season 1. So most people were jumping to that conclusion. I think they should have used a different quote from the prequels as a tease. I would have used, if I were the editor or their social media manager, I would have used the quote, I don't like sand. Now, that'll get people buzzing, but it won't have them be so misguided to think, they're talking about a Disney Plus series when, in fact, they're doing a 25th anniversary retrospective for The Phantom Menace. Now, true, I guess that's not a line from The Phantom Menace. If I was a social media marketing director, I would have put up, this is so wizard. Now that's a line from The Phantom Menace.
And you talk about generating excitement and buzz.
Right. I mean, just the mere thought of Kidster gets me excited as a Star Wars fan.
But the scope of this Empire spread, this issue seems to go beyond just Phantom Menace. They're looking at Phantom Menace, but here we see on the cover, we've got Hayden Christensen here, and he's in his episode 2 grumpy, what do you call it, emo version of Anakin.
Yeah.
This is emo Anakin.
And Nat is wearing the shirt with the midriff removed.
See, now that's a big surprise that they put this on the cover, because Lucasfilm is so prudish now with things like this.
They sure are, aren't they? But, I don't know where they stand on the Padme thing. I know where they stand on Leia's metal bikini.
Right.
Which is like pop culture iconic.
So Nat's midriff must still be legal.
It's okay.
All right.
It's okay. Yeah, and it's
could bounce
damn
a
good
quarter
looking,
off of
too.
that. Yeah, I was gonna There's nothing
Ain't
wrong
nothing
with
wrong
that.
with that. So, Sam Jackson says Mace Windu not dead. He says this in Empire Magazine. And then when asked if he'd want to do what he would want to do in a Mace Windu-centric Disney Plus series, Jackson responded simply, everything, yes. So
Everything.
Wow. Everything. Is no
pretty
whole
broad.
bar Mace. Unfiltered Mace.
Well, he's got a lot of time to make up for. You know what seems unreal to me, and we'll talk about it in a little bit as we cover the announcement about Phantom Menace back in theaters, is that there's been more time between the release of Phantom Menace in 99 and its re-release in the theaters than there was between the release of the original Star Wars and the special edition in 97.
Yeah, that seems right. Well, 20 years.
Right, but it seems like a blink of an eye.
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I've raised children in that period of time. So.
Yes.
1999, that was a long time ago. But also, in a certain way, it doesn't feel like that long ago. I guess you have to be of a certain age and have a certain perspective, you know. But
yes.
Damn, I've raised human beings in that period of time. So something happened.
I'll put some miles on the tires. But, you know, the older I get, though, the more I appreciate that line from Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know, it's not the years, it's the mileage.
Oh, boy. Ain't that the truth?
Hey, speaking of mileage, we're going to get a lot of mileage starting next week as the Bad Batch After Show kicks off. So just a little bit of housekeeping here. We are going to have the first Bad Batch After Show live stream on Thursday. That's February 22nd. That's the day after the premiere. Gives us a little more time. It's a 3-episode premiere, and we still don't know what time these things are going to drop. At least I don't. I don't know if you've heard any more about it or if it's been talked about.
I think we're going back to the old release times where it'll show up at 2 a.m, depending on where you're at, and it'll just be there when you wake up on Wednesday.
Just be there. I like that.
Just be there.
Just be there.
Yeah.
So no regular RFR next week because we're going to be diving deep into Bad Batch Season 3, Episodes 1, 2, and 3 on Thursday. So make sure that you're following us on our social media channels as well as on YouTube so you get that notification. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. There will be more shows. We'll do these mainly on Wednesdays, by the way, because most of the drops are 1 episode per week. We think we can handle that. And there will be an RFR that will go out also that's those same weeks. But when we get into the double features and the triple features, will probably be on Thursdays.
Yeah, we want everyone to have time to watch it as well, while still being able to participate in the live show. And you want to be there for the live show because, well, number one, you can see our pretty faces. And number two, you can call into the show and actually contribute to the conversation. And then 3, you have the chat, the live chat that runs alongside the video. And people sure seem to enjoy that. So it's a 3-pronged attack there with the Bad Batch After Show. Watch, call in, or join the chat, or do all 3.
And sometimes, I don't know if you notice on those chats, some people are having conversations on that chat that aren't about anything we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Or anything. It has these side conversations. So, yeah, you really have to, it's multitasking, big time.
Yeah, some people have their own show going on in the chat. That's fine. We just want you guys to be entertained.
That's right.
That's really all that matters to me.
Yeah. All right. Well, so that's the Bad Batch After Show. Looking forward to that next week. What do you say we kick things off with a little bit of voicemail?
Yes, let's do it.
You must contact me.
Play back the entire message.
What message?
Message after the message.
The Emperor commands you to make contact with him. It's a trick. Send no reply.
Ciao, Jimmy and Jason. This is Ron in Oklahoma again. Listen to your February 9th cast. All right, we lost a great one. Good Carl Weathers, liked him all the time. However, with this Gina Carano suing Disney, and Jason, you actually just said it. You said maybe they'll play to death on TV or play to death on the show, and then they will have another lead come in. Let's have Gina Carano play the lead and recast her. Perfect timing. World works in mysterious ways, you know? All's well that ends well. Things are supposed to happen for a reason, you know? All that. This is the force at work, all right? No, seriously, though, I think it might be a good time for Disney to consider recasting her and, in a sense, taking over the lead where Carl Weathers was in his role as Grief Karga, and she could be the new ruler, so to speak. What are your thoughts? Take care. Chut.
Hey, thanks, Ron. Appreciate the thoughts. You know, Jim, there was a time when you and I were growing up in the 70s and 80s, they never thought twice about recasting people on TV. You know, you had the two Darrens on Bewitched. Yeah, the Becky on Roseanne. We're so precious about it now. In the instance of Darren and Becky, it wasn't a death. So to be fair, with the Darren actor, the original, he was suffering from some health problems, and he just wasn't able to keep up with the filming schedule. With Becky, that actress, she wanted to go off to college and do other things, so they recast her. But point being is, you know, recasting was not as big of a deal as it seems to be these days. I don't know why we're in this state where, oh my God, we would never recast. That's crazy talk.
We live in a time now where pop culture just has unlimited lifetimes. Back when we were growing up, Swank, I mean, things would come and things would go. There was a limited shelf life for a TV series or a movie or whatever. So I think, it was a lot less precious simply because of that. Nowadays, things just don't go away. They get sequels, they get spin-offs, they get remade, they get rebooted. It's just everything gets recycled now. So I think that kind of makes it a little more difficult. Also, with the rise of social media, a lot of these actors and actresses are able to really seize ownership of the roles. I mean,
you're right.
We saw how controversial it was when Ashley Eckstein was denied the opportunity to play live-action Ahsoka. A lot of people complained about that. And that's because Ashley obviously is taking great ownership of the role of Ahsoka via the things she does outside the actual show itself. And so I think that really comes into play big time. But let's talk about the possibility of the character ever even being resurrected, whether being played by Gina or anyone else. I say that'll never happen. And I think that if this thing is going to go, Gina's lawsuit is going to go to trial, I wouldn't be surprised if her death was confirmed on an upcoming streaming series. Just
Can't beat her in the courtroom. Let's once and for all kill her off on the screen.
Quite honestly, if somebody was suing me, demanding me put them back in my movie or TV show playing their old role, I'd just kill off the character. I mean, that's the best way to protect yourself.
So the Gina Carano one is it's so hot. But what about Grief Karga and Carl Weathers? Is the loss of the actor? Is it really the point of no return for a character?
Well, I think it really depends on how important the character is. And at the end of the day, the Mandalorian can continue going on adventures with or without Grief Karga around. I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything to the great Carl Weathers, who's certainly going to be missed. But, I mean, let's just face it, he was just kind of a hub for the Mando, a guy that the Mando could check in with, get some information, and then go off on the adventure. It was very rare that Grief was actually joining him on the adventures, especially by the time we got to season 3. Grief didn't budge outside of that city square on Navarro. So how important actually is the character? That's what I think it all comes down to. And how swiftly can you replace the character's importance with another character. I think in the case of Greef Karga, despite the impact Carl Weathers had on The Mandalorian as a series and in playing the role Greef Karga, to me, I see him as being easily replaceable as far as the story goes.
But see, that's why I feel like it's so easy to recast and just keep the continuity of the character.
Anytime you do a recast, it's jarring to the audience, whether or not it works or it doesn't work. It's always jarring. It's jarring to see a new James Bond for the first time. It's like, oh, am I going to like this guy? Am I going to get used to him? See, you have to go through that process. And the James Bond character is custom made for having different actors come in and play it. But still, you go through that struggle. And then you say, well, he's not as good as Sean Connery. He's not as good as Daniel Craig. There's always that comparison going on. Even if it's not at the forefront of your mind, there's something in your subconscious that's always saying, well, this is good, but it's not as good as, or I don't like it as much as I liked the other guy.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that with a lead character. It's just that with the Greef Karga, but yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be plans that will most likely involve talking about the death of the character. I think they're going to do right by Carl. And as I said last week, I think the caller might have misunderstood. I wasn't saying they were going to play the death on screen, as in you're going to see the character die on screen. What I meant was there might be a passing reference, like you might see a statue of Greef Karga next to the IG-11 statue, and they're standing there in the opening episode, kind of, looking solemn or what have you. But so I think they're definitely going to do it in a real classy way. But whether like with Carrie Fisher when she passed away, I still think they should have just recast it and not made the storyline suffer because of it. So I am camp recast. I say get over it and recast because otherwise, you're just really rolling the dice. You're putting all your eggs in the basket of that character. And it used to be like with Bond, it was like, the producers would basically, after they got rid of Sean, hey, James Bond is forever. You're not. And don't take for granted, you might be James Bond today, George Lazenby, but you're not going to be tomorrow. Now, some of that was box office and that, but the point you brought up about social media and ownership over the character beyond what we've ever been used to. I don't think that Darren Stevens, Dick York or Dick Sargent, by the way, both of them named Dick. I don't think that they that anyone or that they were out there, just claiming ownership over the role like the way that we have now, because of how close we're able to get to these celebrities and these actors through social media. And just interesting. But I think Ron's premise was, well, why don't we do this? We've lost Greef Karga. Let's have a recast Cara Dune come in and be the proxy for Greef. Gives it a good opportunity to get the Cara Dune character back in there, recast it, and all the commotion. Maybe, I don't know if Ron's thinking it'll just go unnoticed. There's enough going on. We get lost Carl. We got a lawsuit with the original actress. Let's recast. But Jim, I think you're right. I think that the play that likely is to happen is that they're going to kill that character off once and for all.
Yeah. Cara's days are numbered. Cara Cynthia Dune, her days are numbered. What was the status of the character at the beginning of Mando season 3? I mean, obviously she didn't appear on screen, but Carl Weathers does say something to Din Djarin about Cara Dune being on some mission for the Republic or something along those ways. I can't remember exactly what the reasoning was why she was absent, but they did address it in Mando season 3.
They did. She was off doing something. I don't remember it was one line, it was sort of a throwaway line.
Yes.
But we were surprised because it left it open. It left it open for the character. It wasn't a firm, closing of the door. So
true. Yes. They didn't
Cara
say,
Dune
boy,
fans, thought that maybe this was just left the door open for a possible return of the character in some form.
It wasn't like the Clemenza situation in Godfather 2 when you had Frankie Five Angels go, and he's wearing the black armband.
Yes, right.
To show his respect for his fallen capo friend. Is it capo or capo? It's capo.
Capo.
Capo is it's a device you use on the guitar.
Right.
Capo. I'm sorry to all you mobsters listening.
Capo regime.
Yeah, I meant no disrespect. So. To all you mobsters. But yeah, they did just have a little throwaway line about Cara Dune being off maybe with the Rangers of the New Republic or something. You won't see her. You won't see that show. You won't see anything anymore. You won't even see Grief Karg anymore. So, but that's what I predict is going to happen. As soon as they get a show or a movie from the Mandoverse up and rolling, Cara Dune's, they'll be all offering, final thoughts on Cara Dune. Maybe even open with her funeral.
Cara Dune, not in this show.
Yeah, right.
Not in this galaxy anymore.
Yeah,
all right.
So,
well, thanks, Ron, for the call. Appreciate it. Let's. What do we got here? Oh my gosh, is this an investigative report?
Oh yeah.
See?
Yes,
oh,
indeed.
Well, we know what to do.
Thank you, Jason. I am Jimmy Mack from the Rebel Force Radio Investigative Report Team. And we're back talking about the Wilhelm Scream once again. Damn you, Matthew Wood. Damn you. A few years ago, he was talking to ABC News, and he revealed that the old Wilhelm Scream was being retired, which actually turned out to be untrue, and being replaced with a new Wilhelm Scream. So let's just hear the words right from Matthew Wood from Skywalker Sound, and then we will discuss.
We've decided to move from the Wilhelm Scream. We're letting the past die, and as Kylo Ren says, and we've started another Scream that we like. That's actually been in this film, and it's been in Rogue One, and it's been in some other films that are not Star Wars related. But it's our own little calling card that we're putting in there. I'll let it gestate in a few more films before we start talking about exactly what it is. But we've got a calling card, very special Scream in there that people would like to know about. But we're going to keep it on the DL.
That's really the last we've ever heard about this new Wilhelm Scream, and that was from several years ago, obviously. He made the reference to Kylo Ren and letting the past die. So these comments were made circa 2017, 2018. And we haven't heard really much about it since then, except from our listening audience, who are the biggest bunch of psychos along with myself. We can't let it go. We got to figure out what this new Wilhelm Scream is all about. And one of those psychos is Anthony. Anthony wrote us, show at rebelforceradio.com, and he said, my friend and I want to be a part of your investigative report team. And we've been trying to find the new Wilhelm Scream for some time now, and I think we found a contender. Anyways, we hear a distinct scream from 3 different sources on Disney+. And Anthony provides us with the 3 screams. And they're from 3 different films, but they all seem to be very similar. So we've isolated them, and we're going to review them here on the show. The first one, this is a contender for the new Wilhelm Scream, comes from Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. This is a moment when one of the Russian soldiers lets out a blood-curdling scream as he gets beamed up into the portal to go up into the flying saucer, whatever the hell's happening in that movie. I still don't know. It's been out, it was like 16 years ago, and I'm still trying to figure out what the hell happened at the end of that film. But here it is. Listen closely for the what could be the new Wilhelm Scream as heard in Indiana Jones.
I don't think I was prepared for that one.
Hit it again.
All right. It's like two notes in there. Wow.
Yeah. Now, I know Mardi Gras kicks off this week. That could be just a recording from the streets of New Orleans there in the French Quarter. You know, so some rando out on Bourbon Street having a good time. Let's hear it one more time. But see, so the thing that we're doing, you know, the psychopaths like myself and Anthony who are hell-bent on figuring out what the new Wilhelm Scream is, we are listening closely for the scream to get repeated in multiple films or TV shows or whatever.
Right.
Just so it is, we get a sense that they're trying to establish it.
Yeah, that was Matt's promise, was that they were retiring the classic Wilhelm Scream and that this was going to be usher in a whole new era of Wilhelm Scream.
Right. And I think Matt Wood actually told me this going all the way back to 2008. So that would have been about the time that they're mixing down Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Is when I talked to Matt Wood about this very subject matter. The second clip comes from Star Wars Rebels, Season 4, Episode 8. So this is around 2017, 2018. The episode is Crawler Commanders. And what happens here is a Trandoshan trips on Ezra's lightsaber, and he falls into a furnace. So let's hear what that sounds like.
Watch out.
Very similar.
Oh, it sure is.
Very similar. Yes. So now we have two different productions using similar sounds. Now, of course, we know that all of the sounds heard on these shows coming out of Lucasfilm come from the library at Skywalker Sound. So it could just be a coincidence, or it could be that this is an attempt to establish a new Wilhelm Scream.
Let me ask you a question about these audio libraries. So when you're looking at stock photography, for example, or stock video, you'll often find work by a particular creator, photographer, videographer, where you could tell it was all done in the same session, and the photos are, let's say you're looking for people sitting in a movie theater. You're going to find sort of the same models in the same theater, just different configurations slightly. Are there close variations in these audio libraries like that, where this could have been just another take or an alternate take of a Scream or something like that?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, there's multiple takes of the original Wilhelm Scream. So,
are there?
Yeah, there's more than one Wilhelm Scream. That's very possible.
I didn't know that.
But, yeah, and, you know, there's a lot of people at Skywalker Sound who've been there for a very long time. Matthew Wood, Gary Rydstrom, Dennis the Wizard Leonard, David Acord. There's a lot of guys who've been there for a while. So it could be one of them. We have our third sample here, and this one comes from the Book of Boba Fett, Season 1, Episode 7, Chapter 7, In the Name of Honor, which is the final episode of the Book of Boba Fett, featuring the Rancor going wild on the streets of Mos Espa. The Rancor bites into a pike, and then we hear something that sounds similar to the previous two screams we just heard. It's a little more buried in the mix, though, so you have to listen closely. You hear that? It's a little more of like a little wow there. Like a wow.
Yeah. That one's
but it sounds similar.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Like a similar sound overall. So I put all three of them together into a montage. We could hear them back to back to back.
Like 1 and 2 are,
yes,
to my ears, identical. But the third one is like half of a Wilhelm Scream.
That's right. So, I mean, at the very least, we have a contender. We've had other contenders in the past. But one thing's for sure is that Skywalker Sound is still using the Wilhelm Scream. I mean, even in that episode of Book of Boba Fett, just prior to hearing what Anthony thinks is the new Wilhelm Scream, there's a classic Wilhelm Scream that happens during that sequence where the Rancor is trashing Mos Espa and beating up Pikes.
Yeah, because we talked about it, I believe, with that episode and said, oh, does this mean that they've given up on the new Wilhelm Scream and they've just gone back to the old one? So who knows?
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I've come to terms with. There can never be a new Wilhelm Scream. Stop dicking around with the whole idea, unless you got something really special and magical. And also, if it's going to be a new Wilhelm Scream, it has to be accessible so that others can isolate it and use it in their productions or whatever. Because Ben Burt, he lifted it right from the film Distant Drums. And you need to have that accessibility for it to be a Wilhelm Scream in the first place.
It can't just be a Lucasfilm Wilhelm Scream. It has to be prolific and go out there into the world and show up in all kinds of places. That's what makes it iconic.
There was a rumor out there that it was like George Lucas was the guy who actually made the new Wilhelm Scream. And so people got so excited about that, but
yeah, they told him he had to go direct a new movie. That's what the Scream was.
You need that level of notoriety behind it.
Yeah.
Because then otherwise, who cares? What's that? An intern at Skywalker Sound yelling? That doesn't, to me, create a new Wilhelm. It doesn't give it Wilhelm status. And I think they're hard pressed to even think of replacing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why replace it?
Why replace it? We don't need a new Wilhelm Scream. So there's another Scream that I heard in a couple places as well, which I think could be a contender. But then again, how are we ever going to verify? So
I don't think Matthew Wood is going to tell us if we find it.
Well, he said in that clip that a reveal would be imminent, that he would.
Yeah, right.
He would eventually reveal it. But then he's probably starting to think, this is more trouble than it's worth. And the Wilhelm has such a legacy that you can't just flip a switch and replace it. The Wilhelm Scream, its notoriety was earned over decades of usage. And then Ben finally came clean in an interview one day about how it's sort of an inside joke among audio editors. And then it just took a life of its own. But no, I'm getting a bad taste in my mouth about even the idea of a new Wilhelm Scream. I'm old school Wilhelm, and that's the way I'll be till I die. And I hope I die with a Wilhelm Scream.
I'm gonna tell you what. If there's any justice in this world at all, that's the last words you'll hear from Jimmy Mack is a Wilhelm Scream. Yeah,
it's like, I'm so sad he's gone, but he went out with a perfect Wilhelm.
All right, well, that's just the kind of humor that you get here at Rebel Force Radio, folks. And if you need more of it, the best place to do so is on Patreon. So as we do each and every week, we feature What's New on Patreon.
Yes, and of course, Patreon is a place to get more RFR. You get more podcasts, you get more video, you get more interaction, you get more, and you get it earlier too. Sometimes you get less. You do get less because we offer ad-free shows. So that's one thing you might not be getting on Patreon. Commercials. So that's a good thing, I think. And
we love our sponsors, though. Don't we?
We do love our sponsors, but we love ourselves more and would rather hear us than them. And I think our listening audience feels the same way. And the people who sign up for RFR Insider Plus on Patreon, they get the shows often early, before anyone else, and ad-free. Plus, we also have bonus programming like RFR Q&A, the Babu Freaks, RFR RPG, and full show video of each and every episode of Rebel Force Radio. So you can look at me and Jason. And, this week on RFR Q&A, Joe Dallas returned. And Joe Dallas is one of our RFR VIPs. They're the ones who get to co-host RFR Q&A with me. And we base the conversations on the topic matter the RFR VIPs want to talk about. This week, Joe Dallas always comes up with interesting topics of conversation, and a top 10 list usually accompanies those chats. This time around, Joe's top 10 list was top 10 Star Wars kitchen items Joe Dallas is not sure he actually needs. And what's surprising is that Joe has a mad collection of Star Wars kitchen items. Some he will use and others he doesn't.
Waffle iron?
Waffle iron? He has a toaster. I don't want to spoil them all.
Oh, yeah, we don't want to do that.
But,
but if you're at the store and you look at Star Wars waffle iron and you go, who would buy that? The answer is Joe Dallas.
Joe Dallas. Well, or it oftentimes, because of the fact that he is a known Star Wars fan, people like to buy him gifts. And the kitchen items, for some reason, are something that people really love to get Joe. And I've been given a few kitchen items myself over the years as gifts. Darth Vader and Stormtrooper salt and pepper shakers, for example. But one thing Joe had that I didn't have, and I was really surprised I didn't have it because I'm someone who enjoys, sushi or Cantonese food or what have you. And I've been using chopsticks since I was a little kid. The lightsaber chopsticks were among the items that Joe showed off. And I was like, well, I'm really surprised that after all these years, the people who know me know I use chopsticks and they know I like that kind of food. Why didn't anybody ever get me lightsaber chopsticks? I was ruminating on that, Jason.
Wow.
You ever ruminate on something?
I've ruminated.
Yeah, I ruminate. And leave it to RFR VIP Suds, who listened to the show. And within 2 days of the show being released, I came home to a box. And inside the box were Star Wars lightsaber chopsticks.
Look at this.
So,
Max got them.
I got them, and I'm ready to use them.
Those are really cool. Yeah, I'm a little too uncultured. I prefer knife and fork. But I got to say, chopsticks do look cool when you know how to wield them, and I can imagine how cool those would look.
They're not hard to use. I mean, I wouldn't expect you to use them, being from Ohio and everything. I mean,
oh, right. The sticks. The sticks, not the chopsticks. No,
it's just one of those things I learned how to do when I was a kid. And, I don't shame anyone for using a fork and knife, believe me. I think the food tastes better with the chopsticks, but
it slows you down, which is a good thing. Yeah,
it makes it
slows
more
you
of a
down.
thing. So, thank you, Suds, for the lightsaber chopsticks because yes, long overdue. And wouldn't you know it, I'm going to a hibachi grill on Saturday, so I'm packing these for the trip, and I'm going to pull them out at the table and blow everyone's minds. Lightsaber chopsticks, step aside.
You know what kitchen item I really regret that I didn't get is that Space Slug oven mitt. I believe it was a Star Wars Celebration exclusive at one point. But you don't know how many times I grab the oven mitt in my house and go, why is this not a Space Slug? It's the perfect piece of merch for the Space Slug.
That is a good one. I've always sort of pictured in my mind's eye what like a fully decked out Star Wars kitchen would look like.
Yeah.
And it's always just going to be in my mind as long as I'm married. There's no way that Star Wars will infiltrate the kitchen. I also think about like a fully decked out Star Wars bathroom too, with shower curtain and everything. That to me seems a little bit more within my grasp.
Yeah. So you might be annexing a bathroom out in the Mac house. That's the small bathroom on your main floor. I think that would work.
Yeah, it's such a small bathroom though. There's not much I can do with it, really. You know, I mean, that bathroom is about, I've been on airplanes that have larger bathrooms.
Well, I thought that maybe that would be the olive branch. Like Wendy would give you that. Like, all right, Jim, you can have one bathroom. It's this bathroom.
No, I'm eyeballing.
It's a half bath.
I'm eyeballing the bathroom upstairs that my kids use. Like, I'll take it over once they move out. Because then that way nobody will complain about it. And I don't think the boys would complain about it necessarily, but I do fear them trashing it just because they're boys.
Oh, man.
So I don't know. I don't want a Han Solo frozen in carbonite shower curtain with a bunch of curly hairs stuck to it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, God.
Hey, it's just a fact of life.
What you're saying. It is, but
if you can't be an adult and talk about this, seriously, Swank.
Wow. All right.
Yeah,
well,
so that's what's happening. But hey, that has nothing to do with what's going on at RFR on Patreon.
Thank God.
You won't find any curly hairs stuck to anything there. You'll only just find great Star Wars content, cool conversations, bonus features, full show video, bonus podcasts,
all that good stuff.
Early bird releases. It's all there, and it's a great community of Star Wars fans.
Got a new Star Wars or a new collector spotlight, I see. Turtle Wars.
Turtle Wars sent over some pictures, and I love posting up RFR Collector Spotlight on Patreon because the response is so immediate and so positive that's just a great thing. Because if you have a Star Wars collection and you have it on display, you know, sometimes you get a little bit tired of it being all for you, and you crave to have feedback from other people who would appreciate it. And that's what we have at RFR on Patreon, are Star Wars fans who will appreciate your Star Wars collection. So I recommend everybody to keep sending in their photos of their collections to us. But you have to be a Patreon member to be able to see these awesome photo galleries. And I find them inspiring as a Star Wars collector myself. And also I'm someone who will be displaying my collection eventually on Patreon. We're getting closer and closer to that day actually happening. But, you know, I got to pull the trigger. I have to pull the trigger, so
Gotta do it. I haven't seen the new Star Wars room. I haven't been out there in a long time.
That's one of the reasons why it hasn't been shared publicly. It's because I'm like, well, Jason has to see it first.
I want to see it in person.
And you've been to my house since 2017. You haven't been out here, so we gotta get you out.
It's got to have been sooner than that. It's got to have been.
No. You did come to Chicago. Well, wait a second now, because
I got stranded in Chicago.
You got stranded in Chicago.
And you came and picked me up.
That's right. That is true. Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
It's been a while. Since
I'm long overdue.
The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
The Last Jedi. And then you were, of course, out here for Star Wars Celebration in 2019, but we didn't hang around my house at all. So
No. We were at the convention center and the hotel and all of that.
Everyone is welcome at RFR on Patreon. The amount you want to contribute each month varies. You know, you can offer up a little or a lot, and naturally, the more you contribute to Rebel Force Radio on Patreon, the more content you will receive. So I'm pretty happy. It's been a busy February too. For a short month, there's been a lot of content going up on Patreon. I was with Tyler Page last night at the Blackhawks game, and he's like, man, I can't believe how many shows you've been posting on Patreon. Even I'm having trouble keeping up. So, we'll keep you busy. If you want to contribute to Rebel Force Radio, do it on Patreon, patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. Join the party. It's a party over there, for crying out loud. A Star Wars party. Red Solo cups optional. But the party is happening over on Patreon. Patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
Well, apparently Collider knows when the... what is that still up there? What are we doing? What's going on?
What's happening?
What's happening? What's happening? See, if you're not an RFR All Access member, you'll have no idea what just happened there. Anyway, ACOLYTE, according to Collider, is slated for a summer release. They say that they have learned this, Jim, that they're not saying that it's an exclusive. They're not saying that it's confirmed. What they're saying, according to the website, is Collider has learned that the live-action High Republic set series from creator Leslye Headland is set to release on Disney Plus this summer. Mm-hmm. Here's what I think is the second most interesting part of this little piece is, and this could be a typo. I could be reading a lot into this, but let's not bury the lead here. Collider says they have learned ACOLYTE this summer. Okay. They also say that it's set 50 years before the events of the Phantom Menace. Up to this point, we have been told that it's about 100 years prior to the events of the Phantom Menace. And Wikipedia has it, to be exact, 132 years BBY, which would put it at exactly 100 years before the events of the Phantom Menace. The reason that I think that this 50-year change, if this is accurate, if it's not a typo, if it's not an error, 50 years really puts this thing in a position to align nicely with the events of the Phantom Menace. And I am thinking back to the Darth Plagueis novel, one of the few novels that I actually read. But it's a great one. It's a great one. James Luceno's Darth Plagueis novel. And all of the sort of early machinations of Palpatine and how he went from being a sort of a Naboo elite to then falling under the spell of the dark side and plotting what eventually became the Phantom Menace. So we know that the High Republic butts up against the prequel era. The end of the High Republic is the beginning of the prequel era. And then we've got this piece saying 50 years, and serendipitously, we have a re-release of the Phantom Menace hitting theaters. When? Well, in May. We'll talk about it in just a little bit. So I wonder if all of this is just kind of lining up to where the ACOLYTE might be more tied into or leading into some of the more familiar events and characters of a galaxy far, far away. Because I think I just have to believe that if they really felt that this High Republic era could stand on its own, they would plant this series in the prime of the High Republic era and not have to potentially lean on some of the legacy concepts, plot lines, stories that they very well will have access to because of this 50-year span. So that's what I've been thinking about since I saw this.
Well, we do like it all to tie in, but I don't know about every Star Wars fan, but I've been desiring a fresh take lately. Sometimes I feel like the people who work on Star Wars get intimidated by Star Wars so much they feel like they have to stay within certain boundaries. And the idea that the ACOLYTE could set up the prequels, a prequel to the prequel, if you will, that's really interesting because we know that Palpatine had been working for a long time on establishing the Sith and putting them in a position where they can eventually overthrow the government and be
destroy from within. That was
it's not just Palpatine. Yeah, it's all the Sith leading up to him.
Yes.
So I find that really interesting. Also, from what I understand about the show, is what's going to make it really fresh is it's going to be the first time a story is actually told from the vantage point of the Sith. So by doing so, it's going to potentially present the Sith as the protagonists and the Republic and the Jedi as the antagonists. Now, that's a different take. And there could be some interesting things that happen there, and there should be some massive pitfalls, too. I'll get into that in a few minutes. But this show, set 50 years before the events of Phantom Menace, the Acolyte will follow a former Jedi Padawan and her one-time master as they fall into an investigation of sinister crimes in an ever-changing galaxy. So, I mean, just the idea of a former Jedi Padawan. Isn't a former Jedi Padawan a Jedi Knight? Or
Not
is this someone
necessarily.
Right, this is somebody who left the Order?
Yeah.
Or maybe even failed at becoming a Jedi, but still sort of stuck around, you know?
Yeah,
became a private investigator or something.
Yeah, they flunked out of Jedi school.
Yeah.
And they just hung around like that. Like the kid that never graduates high school, but he just hangs around and he keeps showing up.
Yes.
But it doesn't, but you could interpret it that a former Jedi Padawan, that could be a Jedi Knight. All Jedi Knights are former Jedi Padawans, but in this case, I think it's implied that this is a Jedi Padawan that for one reason or another left the Order, was booted out of the Order. And it doesn't seem like there's any plans to portray the Jedi in any kind of positive light with this show. So you're right when you say that here's the Sith, they're set up as the protagonists, and it feels like showrunner Leslye Headland is really hell-bent on not being very flattering to the Jedi.
Yes. And we have some clips from Leslye actually addressing some of this, which I think is interesting. Collider, the guys who broke this story, and they revealed the Acolyte is coming this summer. Oh, by the way, I just did want to say, a lot of us fans were thinking Skeleton Crew was going to be the next up. It was supposed to debut late 2023, but we have since learned there have been production issues with Skeleton Crew. We don't know what they could be. We don't know what they are, but that show is still on the docket to be released later this year. But the Acolyte has been slotted into that summer spot. So, I mean, just common sense, you'd think it would be Skeleton Crew next. When Ahsoka wrapped last year, I was talking to friends of mine who were casual fans. They wanted to know what's next. Just 2 days ago, my buddy was saying, I'm bored. I need something. I said, well, Bad Batch is coming. He's like, animation. And I said, well, the Acolyte. He goes, well, what happened to that Jude Law show? Production issues have pushed it back. So the Acolyte is now in the on-deck circle, and it'll be coming up after Bad Batch wraps up to Disney Plus this summer. But we have these clips from Leslye Headland. She talked to Collider, the same guys who broke this story about Acolyte coming to Disney Plus this summer. She talked to them at Star Wars Celebration London last year, and she explains her pitch, her Acolyte pitch that she threw at Lucasfilm. And there's some revealing comments she makes when she's recounting the pitch.
This is the truth, is that when I pitched it, because I came in and I pitched my own idea, I didn't come in and say, like, what about baby Han Solo? You know what I mean? Like, it was like, I was like, what I'm really interested in is Star Wars from the perspective of the bad guys. Therefore, if we set something earlier in the timeline, something before the prequels, but a little bit after, end of High Republic, I was like, then the Jedi become, because Star Wars is always about rebels versus institutional threat, right? Underdogs versus huge empire, right? So if we set it then the Jedi become the antagonists. It's not the bad guys, but they become the bad guys to the bad guys. And I gotta say, Kathy really responded to that. She really felt like that was a pocket of the universe that we had not seen, that nobody else had pitched her. And so I continued to develop it. I turned it into my elevator pitch. I turned it into a bigger, larger pitch for an overall season and series.
Okay. So, yes, the Jedi won't be the bad guys galaxy-wide or within universe, but from the perspective of the protagonists, in this case, the Sith in this series, from their point of view, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. So that's going to be the point of view here. I was here's an issue that I've been having with the Mandoverse is that you have this huge galactic conflict where you're trying to restore freedom to the galaxy. And every time we get a glimpse of what followed the Imperial Civil War, you've got this inept, incompetent, corrupt New Republic. And it's sort of like how I felt about Anakin Skywalker as a character on film. We never got to see Anakin at his best. You know, we saw him as a little kid, then we saw him as a moody teenager, and then we saw him fall to the dark side. We never saw like the golden years until the Clone Wars. So that's what I'm sort of worried about here is that are we never going to see the Jedi in their prime? In the Phantom Menace, they're collapsing. Now we've got the Acolyte where we're at the beginning of their collapse, maybe the setting up their collapse. And from the point of view of the characters themselves, they're the bad guys. So I'm not, trying to be closed-minded about it. I'm trying to look at this from all different angles. But I love the black hat versus the white hat idealism of Star Wars. And I just feel like that's kind of missing. There's a purity about the original trilogy, a straightforwardness that George instilled in it without sort of talking down or feeling like they were dumbing it down. Now I just wonder if we're all just trying to be a little too clever. I don't know.
It's hard to root for protagonists who are evil at their core. I think it's really hard to root for them. I mean, they're just, by nature, you want them to fail.
Yeah.
Because I think most people understand what's inherently good and what's inherently bad. And the Sith are inherently bad, evil. They're fueled by death and despair and anger and hatred. I mean, there's no redeeming qualities to a Sith. There are none.
No.
That's what makes them such great bad guys.
Right. We only see redeeming characteristics in characters like Asajj Ventress, even Darth Maul to some degree after he leaves and is no longer a Sith. Then they start to get some redeeming characteristics. But you're absolutely right. When they're all in, they are pure evil. There's nothing redeeming about Palpatine. And I'll be damned if they end up making him a sympathetic character. Don't go there. I don't want that. I think it's interesting, the perspective that there is real evil in the world or in the universe that defies logic at times. And I think that's what was so powerful about the original trilogy. Now, George always did have an idea of Anakin. I guess at a certain point he gets this idea of Anakin being a sympathetic character and showing how someone becomes Hitler in George's words. But some of them I just like with Palpatine. I just want him to be the embodiment of evil. I don't need a reason why. I don't need to find out he was an abused child or something like that.
Right. You just want him to be all bad.
Right.
In the Empire magazine retrospective of the prequels, they bring up the idea that Palpatine had a son. So did he have sex? This comes up.
Come on. Are you serious? They talk about this?
Yeah. Now I thought his son was a clone.
Yes.
But it does come up. It does come up.
Oh man. See, now I gotta have
just
that
the
in my
idea
head.
that's already been thrown out there. Palpatine getting intimate with someone. I mean, just the concept of that is a contradiction. And and so I got that on my mind, and then I have to think about him becoming a sympathetic character and all of this.
Oh my Lord.
That's not a character we need to be reconstructed. We don't.
No.
the definitions of the character are so set in stone that I fear that any expansion of that is going to lead you down a road of failure because it's so set in stone. Leslye does mention that there were some in the room that immediately pushed back on the idea of Jedi being fallible, being misguided, being maybe even corrupt, who knows? I mean, there was pushback in the room from certain Lucasfilm people who, like, actually know what Star Wars is all about. I don't know. But there was pushback, but it was Kathy Kennedy who was really gung-ho about this. And with Kathy's track record, I just worry that she's looking at this as an opportunity to make a statement about taking down the patriarchy and, you know, all of that stuff. Well, now, obviously, the Jedi themselves, it's not all dudes. There's plenty of female Jedi.
I think it's broader than that. I think it's about institutions. There seems to be this allergy to historic institutions. We want to tear them all down.
Yes.
That's very popular these days, that if it's been around a long time and if it's made rules for people or mores, you gotta destroy it. It's got to be taken down a peg because they probably got there through ill-gotten gain. Yeah, so I don't necessarily want that. And here's the thing. It's not new to Star Wars. The whole prequels was about how the Jedi, through their hubris and their arrogance and their closed-mindedness, it eventually led to their being blinded by the dark side, and then their downfall. And you had a Jedi like Qui-Gon Jinn that was looking for an alternative way. That story has been told. We already know they're fallible. I don't want to see them corrupt. I don't want to see them getting briefcases or what is it, Camtonos of credits in a back alley somewhere. Like, I don't want to see that.
You know, you said it yourself. George did expose us to the Jedi Knights as being flawed. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I mean, Yoda is constantly saying, well, we misread the prophecy, maybe. I don't know. Or, you know, they're not perfect.
Right.
And they're also distracted by the machinations going on politically.
Right.
Which
they're being pulled into politics. And that's...
Yeah. And they have a foot already in the water as far as that goes by being tools of the government.
Right.
So that's the path they were going down, and it was messed up. And Palpatine was able to exploit it by working both ends against the middle to cause a war to break out.
Yep.
So
the ultimate distraction.
We've already seen the Jedi as fallible. As a matter of fact, we saw the Jedi flat out fail, leading to their extinction.
Their massacre.
Right. So when we really analyze it, it's like, well, maybe there is something very true to the integrity of the story that begins in the Phantom Menace. There has to be some sort of background for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So Leslye talks about it here in this next interview clip about just the concept of making the Jedi fallible and how is that going to work.
I think it's difficult to do a show that is critical in any way of the Jedi. And I think that you saw that with Ryan's film. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that especially in that moment, people were very nervous about saying this particular institution may not be the light and, perfect, stunning group of heroes that are totally nobly intentioned. And one thing that I think Dave would say is that they are fallible. That's really the story that George told with the prequels, right? Is the fall of this particular group. So to me, I went, well, then what happened right before that? You know, he sort of starts in media res in Phantom, right? Like, and so I went, well, if you went back further, you know, where are the cracks in the system? How can evil start to rise in the way that it does to the point where literally one of the strongest Sith that ever lived, can infiltrate the Senate, and none of the Jedi know about it. So I think once you can kind of get people into that place, then they're more supportive. But I think when you think you're going to tell the story about bad guys and the Jedis might be the antagonist to those Jedis, I think that makes people nervous. But it didn't make Kathy nervous.
Oh, I'm sure not.
No surprise there.
I really, I understand and I appreciate what Leslye is saying here. It's two different ways to look at the same thing. Either this is going to set up the prequels where we know how it ends with the destruction of the Jedi. You could look at it that way. Well, we already know that there's fallibility in the Jedi ranks. We already know that it leads to their ultimate destruction. But where were those seeds planted? Let's find out where the seeds that bore fruit in the prequels were sown. Or you could look at it the way I think Leslie's looking at it and the way Kathy Kennedy's looking at it, which is, hey, let's make a show where the Jedi are the bad guys.
You know what I find the most interesting about those interview comments she just made there is that this is the first time ever in the history of everything where a Lucasfilm representative admitted Rian Johnson may have been a little misguided in his approach to how he presented Luke and the legacy of the Jedi in The Last Jedi. She mentioned. Is
that how you took it? I took it as she was defending it.
Really?
That audiences just, didn't get it.
Can you play that again just so we can hear what she says?
I think it's difficult to do a show that is critical in any way of the Jedi. And I think that you saw that with Ryan's film. Do you know what I mean? Like I think that especially in that moment, people were very nervous about saying this particular institution may not be the light and perfect, stunning group of heroes that are totally nobly intentioned. And one thing that I think Dave would say is
just the fact that she acknowledges that people had a hard time wrapping their heads around some of the concepts being presented in Rian Johnson's film. I mean, she at least acknowledges that.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Which I think that hasn't happened in the, 6.5 years since that film came out.
Yeah, and she seems to get to the nut of it when she talks about that it was showing this institution, which that's a key word right there.
Yes.
She was that Ryan was showing that this institution was perhaps not the end all be all, that Luke Skywalker himself discovered that. The problem there is that Luke had no alternative. Like I can grok the idea that Luke might have become less enamored by the traditional Jedi way. In fact, we know that that's the case because he actually defies Yoda and Obi-Wan, and he finds a way to accomplish the goal, but not be the one to slay his own father. So Luke has gone against the Jedi establishment of the two Force ghosts. The issue is that, Luke's going around saying that, well, the Jedi must end, but he doesn't have an alternative. And that's what I struggled with. He just gave up.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a interesting way you came to that conclusion there. It's something that I don't ever even recall talking about. It's like, the Jedi must end, but so what's the solution then, pal?
Right.
Do you have something better than the Jedi you want to lay on us? I mean, so they're fallible, so they're flawed, but at least they served a purpose. Luke living by himself in exile on that planet, on the island, that serves no purpose at all other than like a self-loathing desire to die. And that's the message I got from The Last Jedi.
Yeah, it's kind of like, Benjamin Franklin once said about democracy. He said, but democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. So you could say, that the Jedi way is the lowest form of force. I don't know, manifestation, except for all the others, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah. So it's that matter of perspective that, if you don't have anything better, you might as well stick with the thing that's actually working a little bit, even if it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Where in life do we ever even see perfection? Nowhere. And so maybe even with that sort of idea in mind, it's expecting a lot of the Jedi to be perfect, because these are guys who are connected to some mystical energy field that sends them on a quest for discovery and like spiritual awareness and stuff. So they don't have it all figured out anyway, because all the answers are elusive. And it takes a lifetime of discipline and dedication to even find a place where you feel comfortable in the mix, because you'll never understand everything. Life will never be 100% perfect. And there's always going to be challenges and struggles along the way with anything, institution, individual, anything. That's just the nature.
But you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because,
right.
As George Costanza, a great philosopher, said, we're living in a society here. You gotta have some rules.
So Leslye sounds like she's going to be bringing us something bold, something different. I'm hoping that it ties into the overall mythology in a way that makes sense and doesn't get bogged down by current day agendas or identity politics or any of that stuff. Let's get back to the root of quality storytelling.
You can tell great morality tales. Just be clever about it.
Yes,
you don't want to club people over the head. That's where the resistance comes in. Mm-hmm. Art always has something to say, and you don't always agree with what it's saying. But when you have to be so ham-fisted about it, that's people get their hackles up on
as Obi-Wan said, only Sith deal in absolutes.
That's right.
So
I think Leslye Headland sounds she doesn't need me to say this, but I think she sounds very smart. I think she has a lot of convictions about this. So she's dedicated. Let's see what she has to say through this series. So I'm going to approach it with an open mind, though same caution as as you and others. But I do love the idea. Don't get me wrong. I love the idea of setting up the prequel era. I think that's great. I think it's smart.
Yeah. A prequel to the prequels.
Yeah. But speaking of prequels, how about this? This was a surprise, as we talked about earlier. The Phantom Menace getting re-released to theaters in May, celebrating its 25th anniversary, May 3rd. It heads back onto the big screen, kind of like what George did with the original trilogy on its 20th anniversary. Here we got a re-release on the 25th anniversary. There's no talk about releasing the others, so they're not, with the. I'm trying to remember, Jim, going off on a tangent here, but the rollout of the special edition. No, the special editions was always planned to be all three films, right? It wasn't like, let's see how Star Wars does, and if this is a success, we can roll these other. He was committed to all three. They came out in January, February, March of 2007. I remember the release of Return of the Jedi I can't remember if it was either advanced or delayed by a couple of weeks, but I remember that the release of Return of the Jedi Special Edition was different than the original promotional materials. And it may have been because when A New Hope was released, it just did such gangbusters. They weren't expecting it. No. And so, but then I think Empire, the box office was great. It did really well, but I don't think they felt that they had enough momentum to go a whole month. And then I think they brought Jedi in sooner, or I may have that reversed, but I do remember there was a change of that schedule.
Yeah, I vaguely recall there being some sort of shift in the way those things were released as well, but I don't really recall exactly how and why and when and all of that.
Right. But nonetheless, Phantom Menace back on the big screen May 3rd, just in time for the May the 4th weekend, which is great for Star Wars fans. So it's been a long, gosh, I'm trying to think the last time we had a Star Wars film in theaters for May the 4th.
Wow. Really? Yeah, because
Has it ever happened? No.
Has it ever happened? The releases always happened in late May originally, and with the prequels. The special editions, as you mentioned, came out in the winter, January, February, March, because I mean that was a gamble.
Yeah.
Some fans might not realize that, but the special editions were a huge gamble. And thankfully the box office responded kindly. And then the sequel era of films, we saw largely December release dates, with Solo getting released in May. So it's either May or December.
Mm-hmm.
And
late May.
It's always late
mid to late May, yeah.
Around close to Memorial Day.
Right.
So with wow, in the theaters on May the 4th, I saw a screening of the original. And it was like one of those unauthorized screenings. It was in a private theater. And that was May the 4th.
Okay.
Yes.
It's like a local screening that was
a local
unauthorized,
thing.
yeah.
Some fan groups ran it, and they asked me to introduce it. And as the film started, the power went out in the theater. So we're surrounded in darkness. And I got up on the stage to vamp, you know.
Tap dance.
So my whole family's there, wife,
oh no,
2 sons, and I'm up there vamping. And then I stepped off the stage, but I didn't find the steps. I stepped off the stage. Down I went. Boom.
Oh no.
Twisted my ankle. Yeah.
Right in the orchestra pit. Poof.
Yeah, essentially.
Oh man.
Essentially. Tried to downplay the whole thing as I was limping back to my seat. But yeah, that's the one time I recall being in a theater to see a Star Wars film on May the 4th. This is great. It's going to be out there. A whole new generation of fans will be able to see it on the big screen. It'll add on to the already fat box office numbers for Phantom Menace. I'm curious to see what kind of box office it'll bring in. It seems like movie audiences of 2024 are more accustomed to seeing re-releases on the screen. More accustomed than we were, say, even 5 to 10 years ago.
Oh, no question. No question, especially with the strikes that we've been through that took up at least half of 2023. They recycled a lot of stuff. Movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off getting re-releases and things like that. So not just big blockbusters, but the
great thing about Phantom Menace, too, is it's so kid-centric. Mm-hmm. You have a kid protagonist. There's a lot of kid humor in there, and it's a big, colorful, spectacular thing to watch. So a lot of young parents who may never have had the chance to even take their kids to see the sequel films because they were too young or whatever, they now have an opportunity to take their kids to see what is probably the most kid-centric live-action Star Wars film there is. And I think that's great because I remember taking my son Dylan, who had never seen The Phantom Menace in the theaters before, to Phantom Menace 3D. That happened, I want to say, 2011, 2012. And I'll always recall walking back to the car with him after the film had ended and him saying, this was way more fun than I thought it was going to be, so it was just the whole excitement of seeing the film. Maybe those little 3D glasses had something to do with it. No word on if there's going to be a 3D option for this one.
I'm glad you brought the 3D release up because I was just about to say, oh shoot, was that released over May the 4th? The Phantom Menace in 3D.
That was a winter.
That was also a winter release.
Yeah, that was a January, maybe early February.
Okay,
if I remember correctly.
And then the plan there was that they were all going to be released in 3D.
Yes,
but it did not do well or as well. And I think the pressure was probably higher because they needed to recover the costs of the upgrade to the technology, the upgrade to do the transition from 2D to 3D.
Along with the aggressive marketing, too, which
Yeah.
costs a pretty penny. But the thing that killed the 3D releases was George selling the company to Disney. And one of the first things they did was they shut down anything having to do with the prequel era. The 3D releases of the films.
Right.
The Clone Wars television series, and all of the media.
Prequelitis is
novels.
what the term you coined back in the day.
Oh, yeah. I heard from a very reliable source that the guys, the top executives at Disney, do not like the prequels. And right away, I knew it was over. Heck, I was part of a group that was pitching Lucasfilm on an audio, like a radio drama of the prequel films.
I remember
we got
that.
pretty far in those talks, and we had the Clone Wars cast on board with voicing their characters for a radio drama based on the prequels. And as soon as that sale went down, poof, it went away. Because Disney had mad prequelitis when they first bought Star Wars. Then, they realized, they finally came around to the idea that, hey, this Ahsoka character's making some money here. What is it? Oh, that's prequel era? She's from the prequel era? Well, I didn't see her in the movies. All this confusion.
Yeah, they're looking at the Her Universe lines at the convention saying, what's going on over here? What's this?
Now the prequels are being embraced as they properly should be as part of the legitimate Star Wars legacy as forged by George Lucas himself. And there's less anxiety from Disney executives about cashing in.
Yeah.
Because that's all it is a big cash in. I do have to say this 25th anniversary poster art looks phenomenal. It's so great. It's a great poster.
I like it as well.
Really one of the color palette, the way that all the different art elements are blended together. It really tells a story, this poster art. And it's been a long time since I've been able to say that about any Star Wars poster art.
Or Blu-ray cover or DVD cover. Oh, it's been brutal. I would love for this to be sitting on my, on my shelf somewhere as a Blu-ray or a 4K disc cover, something. But man, you're right. They have really fallen short with that stuff, and not just Star Wars. Not just Star Wars. I'm a collector. I know Jim, your son Dylan, is a collector of physical media, and it's just the pits. It's the pits. In fact, a lot of the boutique labels have smartly made the inserts reversible so that they've got the crappy photoshopped new cover art, but you can flip it around and get the classic one sheet, the classic art. So there's a few of the boutique labels like Shout does that, and I think Kino Lorber might do that. But anyway, so I always wish that with the Star Wars releases that you could flip it around and have the original, either the Struzan art or just the classic one sheets that came out. This is a good one, though. It's a good addition.
Yeah. So we'll be looking forward to this. And I just hope that Hasbro doesn't get head over heels about the Phantom Menace returning and start flooding the market with Jar Jar Binks action figures again. I mean, they've been burned at least 3 times by merchandising Jar Jar. They got to stop.
Well, you brought up
There's
Jar
a lot
Jar.
of characters they can make action figures out of.
Yes. You brought up Jar Jar, and Jar Jar is nowhere to be seen on the poster. The poster features the visage of Darth Maul in the background looking at our characters. The front and center is Queen Amidala in her red regal robes, and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn sort of back to back with their sabers drawn, and then just very, very tiny little Annie down there.
Annie,
the shadow of Annie.
Little Annie.
But it's a beautiful poem.
It is you. What do you know? Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think if this let's just speculate if this does well enough by Disney standards, you think that we could see re-releases of Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith maybe the following year or something like that?
Well, they would probably want to take advantage of the 25th anniversary for each individual film. So.
Oh, we got to wait 5 more years?
Yeah. Hey, it's already been 25 years. What's
right. What's another 5? We'll still be here. We'll still be here podcasting.
Yeah.
About Star Wars. Yeah. Oh, boy. All right. Well, let's follow up on the Gina Carano saga, the lawsuit. And I have a follow-up on my own thinking, and I just want to kind of talk real quick before because I want to get this off my chest before I listen to her audio clips, because it's either going to agree with what I'm about to say or help maybe verify or blow it all to pieces. I don't know. But I was saying last week that this felt to me like she might have been chasing the dollar, that the two films, the two Mandoverse films that have been released, and she does feel that she was wronged, deeply wronged. There's no question about that. But I thought, okay, now she's looking at, this isn't a lost streaming series for me. These are lost film rolls, cinematic, in the theaters film rolls. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, is this really about money? Because she's being bankrolled by the richest man in the world, literally the richest man in the world. Is it about money, or is it really about revenge and trying to embarrass Disney? And that's what I think that this is about. I think they dragged her through the mud. I do believe that. I think they did drag her through the mud. And to a large degree, unnecessarily so. I don't think it was their finest hour. And she wants discovery. She wants this to at least get that far in the legal process. She wants to see Bob Iger's emails, Kathleen Kennedy's emails, text messages, all that stuff. Because even if it doesn't buoy her case, there could be enough in there that's going to make them look real bad. And so that's what I think this is really about. Not about the money.
Excuse me as I start frothing at the mouth over the mere idea of this being on court TV and seeing, Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, Kathy Kennedy giving depositions and, just wow. Yeah, the emails, all that stuff. That would be amazing. And let's face it, she's not asking for that much money. She's asking for $75,000.
Right.
So it is, and she's asking for something that will never happen, getting the rollback.
Right.
That'll never happen. And she must know this. But see, you can't really put a dollar value necessarily on her getting the rollback. You could say, well, she has the potential to earn XYZ. But you really can't they can't just cough up money and say, well, we're not going to bring you back, but here's X amount of money. That should cover any costs you would have maybe have earned if you continued with the role. It could easily be pushed back. No, I would have earned more. I would have earned much more. I want to take this to court. Well, we'll give you your $75,000. No, that's, let's talk about it in front of a judge.
Yeah, that's why I think she's not going to settle. And a lot of people are saying this is going to be dismissed. I don't think this is going to be dismissed. And people point to, and I love the attitude of some of these people. Like we're so dumb we don't realize that there wasn't a contract. Although I don't know that that's necessarily been established as absolute solid fact, because Lucasfilm hasn't been that detailed in whether there was or wasn't a contract. But one thing we know there was discussion. There was discussion between Gina Carano and the executives there, including Jon Favreau, pitching her and telling her that she was going to be anchoring her own series.
Right.
That there may not be a contract, but you get a decent lawyer. You don't need a contract.
Right, because they're showing a sort of
intent.
Verbal commitment.
Yeah, and a verbal contentment. Yes.
Yeah, there's there was definitely a future for the character. And we all know that.
Yes.
So, yeah, you can't say, well, she wasn't under contract. Well, they would have, another contract was forthcoming, clearly, in the form of the Rangers of the New Republic show and the role she would have played with that. The fact that Jon Favreau did reveal that to her. That's actually in the complaint she filed.
Right. And all they need is a text message from Jon Favreau mentioning Rangers of the New Republic and their intent to have her in the show, or an email or something like that.
Yep.
And again, for a good lawyer, that's all they need.
There's a verbal contract there.
Right.
Know? There's a commitment, at least.
Right.
A commitment. So, wow. Yeah, what a tangled mess. Well, let's get into the Gina clips.
Okay.
Let's hear from Gina herself. She appeared on the phone last week on the Glenn Beck show, and she told him exactly why she decided to sue Lucasfilm.
It was really interesting because for the longest time, for the last couple of years, I was just distraught, trying to rebuild my life, running into all sorts of, problems of trying to, recreate my career. And finally, I was like, I had to just give it to God and say, all right, you've got me in life. I'm going to keep going, and I have to let this go and give it to you. And, whatever justice I get, I know you're working behind the scenes for me. And then it was almost as soon as I did that, I got a email from a lawyer that was hired by Elon Musk and X to inquire about my case. And then I was just so excited, and I emailed him back immediately. And, we started going through all of, I just educated them, and I sent them everything I have to date, and I have a lot more to send them. And they're wonderful, and they are just excited, and they couldn't believe. They were kind of dumbfounded about how this happened.
Okay. So just what we were saying, she's got eager attorneys. Obviously, Disney's going to have some of the best attorneys in the world, armies of attorneys and lawyers. But I don't think these people would be taking such a high profile stance if they didn't believe she actually had a case. I think if they thought this was going to get laughed out of court, we wouldn't even really be hearing about it. I don't think anyone would want, what lawyer wants to be laughed out of court and have their case dismissed by Disney? That's not anyone's goal. There's nothing in it for them. But what's revealing in that clip is that she was clearly struggling as an actress. Her career was ruined. It was destroyed. I mean, she flirted with some projects with the Daily Wire, but I mean, that's not going to reestablish your acting career. So she not only it's not like she just lost a gig. She lost a career.
Oh yeah. No question.
That's different.
Her agency dropped her.
Right.
They made it impossible for her. And it went even beyond her career. You'll find in this next clip, she talks about how her personal life got invaded, and she actually dealt with some physical setbacks as what she thinks as a result of the trauma from having to go through the ringer courtesy of Lucasfilm. So here's what she had to say about that.
They didn't even contact me to let me know they were letting me go. They didn't contact me to let me know that there was about to be paparazzi stalkers and people flooding outside my house. I found all of that out just like everybody else did over the internet. It was awful. It was, I've been trying to put on a really brave face for the last couple years, but I mean, I cannot begin to even describe. I couldn't leave my house for 7 days. I was being stalked. I was being harassed. They were coming up to I had to keep all of my blinds closed, and I had actually lost all hearing. I don't know. It's a very interesting, random thing. I lost all of the hearing. As soon as I was canceled, my hearing got clogged, and I could only hear 5%. And so I really had to sit there in my head, and I really had to sit there in my head and just go over things. And it was was quite, it was torturous until I finally was just like, okay, I just gave it to God. And, you know, it was just such an intense time. And, you know, for them not to even warn me, you know, I didn't live in a gated community. So I was just out there. And that wasn't, you know, you think that somebody would have, you know, just call me and tell me, hey, thank you for all your work and everything. And we're just no longer going to work with you. And then they put out the statement about the denigrating people off of their religious and cultural beliefs and being abhorrent. And I was just like, it was just at the worst time possible. They really kind of, you know, they definitely put my life in danger at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure some are going to listen to this and say, okay, well, this is, you know, being a little melodramatic here and that. But I will tell you that when you are being chased by that swarm of angry bees, when you are in the eye of that storm, it's very, very difficult. There's a lot of stress, and there's also a lot of nut jobs out there. There's a lot of nut jobs, and they were essentially, here's the thing. They were implying some really nasty things about her, which, okay, fine. If you believe that they're true, fine. Believe what you want to believe. But they did nothing to dispel the very definition of character assassination that they basically let the swarm of angry bees control the narrative instead of doing what she was suggesting, which is, all right, can you come in here and just clear the air and say, look, we're parting ways. All right, we're parting ways. We can no longer do this. But that's not what they did. They essentially abandoned her and then started putting out statements that portrayed her in an even worse light. Again, this is whether you agree with her comments or don't agree with her comments or feel that her comments were as abhorrent. Nonetheless, it wasn't just her that potentially behaved very badly here. This was also very poor behavior on behalf of Lucasfilm and Disney. It just was. It was not professional. It was not professional. Vindictive. Yes, it was vindictive. And when you litigate and you put somebody through the court of public opinion, instead of doing it officially as a corporation that has fiduciary responsibility and a great reputation to uphold, they didn't do that. They just threw her to the wolves of the vultures on social media. And that's not the way that you stay. Again, let her go, but acknowledge the work that she did at least, and say, okay, we're parting ways. Yeah, the more I think about this, the angrier I get. Not because I'm defending Gina Carano, but I'm so deeply offended by the way they handled it.
They made it personal,
right?
By using words like abhorrent and I mean, they condemned her publicly. They could have just said, she's no longer going to be working on the show. We wish her the best of luck in whatever she does and just move on.
Right.
But they had to throw her under the bus.
Yeah.
And that's what made it personal. So she has a few more comments about the case here that I want to listen to. I'm really not sure what she says in this clip, but I'm sure it's something that might get us talking.
All right.
The post that I got fired for originally, or what they said I got fired for, was never supposed to be what the media and all of them twisted into. It was supposed to be, do not demonize your neighbor. We need to look at each other as human beings, because the internet is one thing, but when you get outside and you get around people, there's so much love and there's so much, it's not the internet. The internet is false. It's a lot of people hiding behind, brave ideas and false accounts. And when you get to be around people, there is, we all bleed, red. We're all just kind of on this earth together. And so I hope that the outcome for this case is just to make, everybody kind of be a truly inclusive industry in Hollywood, and make it that much difficult to do what was happened to me to happen to the next person.
Yeah, one way you could do it is just suspend the social media accounts of all celebrities and public figures.
Shut them up and shut them down.
That's right.
Yes,
no,
yes.
we want people to have obviously the freedom to express themselves, but we also want people to use good judgment. And we have an obligation. Everyone has an obligation when you are in. You put anything out there for the world to consume, is you want to have the largest audience possible. So you want to isn't that the goal? You want to have the highest ratings, you want to have the highest box office.
That's how it used to
be. Yeah, you want your podcast download numbers to be big. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to put up these gates and say, well, I don't want, if you believe this, I don't want you as a customer. I don't want you as a podcast listener. I want everybody to listen to the podcast. Listen to the podcast. That's what I want. So I'm not going to go out of my way. Now, I'm going to be truthful to myself and what I believe as we're talking about Star Wars, but I'm certainly not going to go out of my way to try and isolate a portion of the potential audience. That would be stupid of me to do. It's also not what I'm here to do. I'm here to talk about Star Wars. The only reason we're talking about Gina Carano and this lawsuit and her controversial posts is because it happened to us and it's impacting Star Wars storytelling. Yeah. And you'll notice we haven't really dwelled on this Gina Carano thing. It's now relevant because of the lawsuit and because we have been able to see, starting with season 3 of The Mandalorian, how that character's absence has derailed and disrupted the storytelling happening in the Mandoverse. So it's very relevant.
Quite possibly. Well, and this goes back to the Acolyte conversation too. It's just, it's strange that Hollywood is so motivated by activism nowadays, and and activism itself, while it could bring a lot of progress and make great steps forward, it also seems like you box people out. And that's what you were talking about, Jason. Boxing people out. So I don't know. Best of luck to Gina Carano. I mean, if there's really shady stuff going on, I hope she does expose it. But I don't know if I have that much confidence in her lawsuit, because I've recently acquired this recording here. It's something that was picked up on a hidden microphone. It picked up a conversation with Elon Musk's lawyers as they were prepping for the Gina Carano case. And after I heard this audio, I have to admit, I lost a little bit of confidence.
Man. All right. Well, hold on to your hats.
You can't go. You have a problem with women.
That is a damnable lie. I love women.
Gina said you call her Gina for your entire meeting.
Ew. That's not good.
Yeah, she said she corrected him 5 times.
Gina said that?
Oh, man. I think they got an uphill battle if they're going to be putting Attorney Dwight on the case there.
Volunteer sheriff, volunteer deputy Dwight. Wow.
I don't know. I thought Elon Musk was really, his money would purchase the best of the best. Now I'm not so sure.
Oh, man. You got to laugh at this stuff, folks. You got to laugh. And as I said, look, you can hate Gina Carano. You can hate the character of Cara Dune. You can say she was a bad actress. Whatever your complaint is, fine. You can have your thoughts, but you can't deny this is fascinating, and you can't deny that this already has and will continue to impact Star Wars and the Lucasfilm company. So we're going to keep our eyes on it. And if you want to sound off, give us your thoughts. You can leave us a voicemail. You can leave us or send us an email, show@rebelforceradio.com.
That's right. You sure can.
What's next? Tim Morrison. All right. He's like, screw this Gina Carano stuff. I want to come back. I want to be Boba.
Yeah, right.
It was my turn. I'm not suing Disney. Hire me. Hire me. I'm happy to work.
Well, Tim, a recent interview with Tim was conducted with Discovery's New Zealand News Hub, and he gives us a little update on the status of season 2 of the Book of Boba. And let's just turn it over to Tim.
I don't even know if there is going to be a season 2, and you're the first one to know this.
All
I don't
right,
know what's
you just
going
don't
on
know
there.
what's going on.
I don't know what's going on. Well, we're coming out of this downtime period, so
Yeah.
I think everyone's just settling back in.
Yeah.
And, it all goes back to budgets and what they want to do and how much everything costs. So
Always.
I really don't know. Judging by the fans I've met, they all want a season 2 of Boba Fett, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't know. I hope they make up their mind before Tim turns 70, for crying out loud. He's in his early 60s.
We know they won't recast it, you know.
So that's Tim basically giving us an update. Nothing is happening with Book of Boba as far as he knows. And I think there is definitely potential for a season 2. I think there's big potential for that. But there's a lot of Star Wars characters out there and a lot of stories to be told. I don't know if seeing old Boba as the daimyo is something that fans are really clamoring for these days, considering all the competition from the other characters and stories and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
boy.
Yeah.
I can't help but think they had one bite at the apple on that, and it just was a little bitter. And some great moments, though. I mean, there's so many great. I'm really hoping that they put that actually out on 4K disc, because the what I've seen with Mando season 1 and 2, just phenomenal. And there's just some great eye candy in Book of Boba Fett, and just some really just fun Star Wars stuff happening. Yeah. But it fell short in some areas, and Tem has admitted as professed as much himself. You know, he didn't really. He joked about it, but he didn't like the idea of Mandalorian coming in on his show.
No. I think he was being tongue in cheek, but still, there's some truth to the
I think there's some truth. So Ewan McGregor is also out there talking about wanting to do more. He was at MegaCon earlier this month and talking about how he experienced watching the last few episodes of Kenobi season 1, how emotional he was, and why he would like to go back and do more.
Then I came back some weeks later and again sat alone, but I was like, the 6th one really got me, you know. I was just sitting there with tears rolling down my face watching. I was so touched by it.
Oh, and so were we, of course.
So pleased. So happy. Just so happy to be that we managed to do it, and also that we did it like that. Like I feel like we could have, you know, there's always it was originally going to be a movie, and you know, I've often thought, well, should it have been a movie, but I kind of think it's great that we did it that way, and it's a longer story, and hopefully it's more satisfying as a result. We got more screen, you know, more time to weave a story. Just hope we can do another one. Can everyone write to Disney? Email addresses at the end. I would just say, dear Disney, let's have a bit more of Obi-Wan Kenobi, please.
Let's have a bit more of Obi-Wan Kenobi, please. You know, I mean, Ewan has, I would say, a lot of leverage here. He's a big, bona fide film star. His wife is actively working in Star Wars as Hera Syndulla and Ahsoka. So he's got to have the ears of the right people, but he doesn't necessarily have the ears of Bob Iger. So what this is telling me is that these decisions about greenlighting another season of Kenobi or something like that, I think it's happening at a level above Kathleen Kennedy, above Dave Filoni, above Jon Favreau. I think these decisions are being made by Bob Iger. I really do.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit more, I wouldn't say micromanaging, but just let's say the intensity of managing.
Oversight?
The intensity of managing these various studios under Bob Iger's umbrella. I think Bob is paying a little more attention these days. And the buck stops with him. I think it always does. Ewan does mention, writing Lucasfilm, and he jokes about, I got an email address for you. Well, I'm not joking. I'll give you the email address. The address you want to write to, if you want Lucasfilm to hear you, is publicity@lucasfilm.com. Publicity@lucasfilm.com. I happen to know there's a lot of eyes on that account, and those eyes go high up. So you want to let them know, publicity@lucasfilm.com. Flood their email inbox with your desires to see a second season of Kenobi. And while you're at it, flood their inbox and let them know that they should quit ignoring Rebel Force Radio. I mean, let's be real here. It used to be part of their marketing plan. And now it's like, geez. I light up a lightsaber chopstick here on the show, and the next thing you know, I'm getting cease and desist letters. So. But that's an exaggeration. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Publicity@lucasfilm.com. That's where you want to go. Hey, do we got some time for pop culture?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's check in with Star Wars in pop culture.
Rebel Force Radio.
You've already made that Star Wars reference.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars parody.
Well, I have absolutely no idea who this guy is. I saw this story. Bill Walton. I have no idea. Now I've now come to understand that he's a famous, legendary basketball player. But this, I couldn't believe this. That this guy, Bill Walton, is claiming, again, this is a legendary basketball player. He's now 71 years old. That not only did he once audition for the role of Chewbacca the Wookiee, but he claims that the character was inspired by him. Jim, I know you're you're a bigger sports fan than I am by a long shot. Is there truth to this? What is this guy smoking?
Well, that's a very important question to ask when you're talking about Bill Walton. What's this guy smoking? There's no question about that. But Bill is, he's a legendary NBA Hall of Famer, and currently he does broadcasting, and he's very outspoken. He's very funny, and he's out there, man. Bill can be way out there sometimes. And I read his book. It was fantastic. But Bill, this is very interesting information that he revealed just sort of out of the blue during a USC and Oregon NCAA broadcast. This comes from People magazine. After fellow broadcaster Dave Pasch questioned the validity of a rumor involving both Walton and Han Solo's right-hand Wookiee, Walton himself clarified that he did somehow inspire the role of Chewbacca. So we went back to the game and pulled the audio. Here's Bill Walton.
Is it true that you were in the mix to play Chewbacca?
No.
I heard that.
Chewbacca is modeled after me.
I'm being serious. I heard that you were in the running for that you were being considered to play that role. I'm being dead serious.
You're always serious. That's one of your problems, is that you don't have fun with your life.
But you're not answering the question.
No, George Lucas is as cool as they get. And I remember the night that George and Kareem and Bill Russell and me, we were all up in San Francisco at a big fundraiser for the Martin Luther King Memorial. Beautiful play by Kajani Rice.
So since you're not answering the question, I'm just going to assume it's true.
What was the question?
I'm just going to assume it's true because there's...
I auditioned for Chewbacca, and they said, no, but we're going to model the character after you.
You were in Ghostbusters, and people didn't know that. So, again, I think there's a great chance that this is a true story.
All right.
There's a little bit to unpack there.
Yeah, I was going to say, we do have a timeline of events that he's throwing out here. We got a George Lucas fundraiser for MLK Day, where Walton was there with Kareem. I'll never forget being there at the Martin Luther King, and George is a George is a great guy, but I don't know if that was the moment when George looked at him and said, "Oh, you're going to be the inspiration for this character," because, I mean, George wasn't that well known at the time, or, right before Star Wars. He was coming off of American Graffiti, but, he wasn't a household name. I don't think celebrities were just knocking down his door to like hang with the guy at that period of time. I don't know.
It's this fundraiser he mentions for the Martin Luther King Memorial in San Francisco. That memorial was constructed in 1993. So that would have been well after the time Chewbacca was conceived and casted. That's many, many years beyond the Chewbacca considerations. I never heard of Lucasfilm looking anywhere outside of the UK for their Chewbacca actor. As a matter of fact, it was offered to Dave Prowse first, and he famously turned it down because he wanted to play the villain.
Yeah.
And also he didn't fancy the idea of walking around wearing all that fur on the set. He knew it would be challenging. But so when does Bill Walton and George Lucas cross paths? It would have had to have been before the Martin Luther King Memorial. He says it's a fundraiser for the memorial.
Yeah.
So unless they started raising funds for the memorial way back in the mid-'70s, as Star Wars was being created.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, the memorial was finally created in 1993. So you'd think that any fundraising for that memorial probably happened in the years just prior to it, not decades previously. But also Bill doesn't necessarily say that's how he knows George Lucas. He just cites that as one time he hung out with George. But, that's a real head scratcher.
It is. So you said that this guy has a tendency to be a little out there. So what do you we all have heard that George based Chewbacca on his Alaskan Malamute, Indiana.
Right. That's where the inspiration for Chewbacca came from.
Right.
But as I'm looking at this photo you have on the screen with Bill Walton circa 1970-something and Chewbacca the Wookiee right next to him, I do admit I see a similarity. Put Chewbacca in a tie-dye shirt, and that would definitely be Bill Walton.
Dang.
Bill is very he's very tight with the whole Grateful Dead scene. So and obviously he spent a lot of time in San Francisco. Maybe that's how he came into contact with George Lucas. I know George, obviously, see, I'm trying to make a Grateful Dead connection here. George, Mickey Hart worked with George Lucas at Skywalker Sound, recording the Tibetan monks, but that was in the early 90s. So I don't know of any George Lucas Grateful Dead connections before that. And the reason I bring it up is like Walton is really considered part of that Grateful Dead family.
Oh, okay.
He's traveled with them. You still see him at Dead and Company shows. You just
I have another shot of him, by the way, here. He's sporting like a chin beard here. So he's very hairy.
It's just Wookiee vibes, yeah.
Yeah, but I thought he was reminding me of somebody else here, another film character. I was actually getting Teen Wolf Michael J. Fox. That looks more like a Bill Walton to me than Chewbacca the Wookiee, but who knows?
Michael J. Fox and Teen Wolf. Yeah, that was inspired by Bill Walton for sure. Well, you don't know. It's Bill's take on reality is sometimes askew. So maybe he was just rolling with the questions, or maybe Bill actually believes he was the inspiration for Chewbacca. But Bill also says that he actually auditioned. Yeah. Which is possible. I mean,
I don't remember. I remember with Revenge of the Sith that George used basketball players.
He did. He used Australian professional basketball players in the roles of the Wookiees that are pictured on the Kashyyyk battlefield.
Right, but the idea of using ball players for Chewie, like you said, I've Never heard that before.
No. So this is just one of those things that I hope this story doesn't die. I hope people follow up with this, with Bill Walton on this. Lord knows if I ever cross paths with Bill Walton, I'll be asking him about Star Wars. But I hope some other reporters dig a little deeper and say, Bill, were you just blowing stuff out of your butt, or did you really audition? That would be interesting. Yeah. It would be very interesting. All right, one more pop culture. Let's go through this one quickly.
Let's do it.
This is The Love Boat. The Love Boat on ABC. Jason L. from Maryland wrote into us and says, hey, Jimmy and Jason, I was channel surfing this weekend and stopped upon an episode of The Love Boat when I spotted Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira appearing on the show. In this episode from season 2, Ben and Ann play a married couple aboard with their 4 children, one of whom is played by a very young Corey Feldman. Oh, man, this thing is star-studded. In their second scene in the dining hall, Ann Mira's character is trying to get her son, played by Corey, to eat his peas. So let's hear. She's like, imagine a mom with the kid. She's got the spoon in her hand, and she's trying to get him to eat the peas. Listen for the Star Wars reference.
The can of peas.
Okay, here we go. Here comes the starship. Open up the space station.
Mission aborted.
Come on, Charlie. There are millions of Wookiees starving in space. Charlie.
Oh, we gotta peel it back a little bit for some of the younger listeners. So, Ann Mira and the name just flew out of my head.
Jerry Stiller.
And Jerry Stiller. Ben Stiller. Yeah.
Ben Stiller's dad.
Ben Stiller's mom and dad. They were a comedy duo. Most people would remember Jerry Stiller as George Costanza's father on Seinfeld. Frank Costanza, and Mira was also in King of Queens. She showed up on Alf. She did a lot of stuff back in the
Jerry
the
was
70s
famously on every episode of King of Queens.
Right, of course,
Spooner.
yes. But they reunited. They were married like 50-some years, the two of them, and they reunited on that show. But anyway, that's not what you're here for. You're here for this. We got it on the screen later in the episode. After dropping the Wookiees and the starships, young Corey Feldman appears wearing a Darth Vader mask. And this looks like one of those masks that you would, the Don Post mask that you would get in the box.
It's hard to tell. Well, here, let's just hear the scene real quick because there is a little Star Wars reference.
Oh, do we have another?
Yeah.
We have more audio. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. I was jumping ahead.
So Ann Mira and Jerry Stiller they think they're alone in their cabin, and they're, they're kissing, they're being intimate as couples do. And then all of a sudden, their son, Corey Feldman, pops up, and he's wearing a Darth Vader mask. And this is what that sounded like.
I can't find my Chewbacca shirt.
Okay, darling. Mommy will help you find it.
In that scene, Corey is wearing a mask. And the observation that Jason from Maryland makes is the mask he's wearing doesn't match the other late 70s masks that we're aware of. Was that something made commercially available at the time, or was it made specifically for the show? The thing is, it's made up of 2 pieces. You have the front mask and then the helmet. And when Ann Mira picks up Corey after he interrupted their little makeout session, you see the back half of it fall to the floor. And that's what alerted Jason L. from Maryland.
It's 2 pieces. By the way, I said Don Post. I meant Ben Cooper. That's what I meant with the old school.
It's too advanced for Ben Cooper, but it's not as quality. The quality isn't there enough for it to be Don Post.
Don Post, right? It's something in between.
Yeah, so thus the confusion.
It's a Ben Post. It's something. it's a matchup.
Well, we don't know anything about Halloween masks from the late 70s, early 80s. I'm no expert on it, I know what I know, and I'm not familiar with that particular mask. But if you're listening to the show and maybe you don't have access to the video like our RFR All Access supporters do on Patreon. If you fancy yourself some sort of expert on Star Wars masks from the vintage era, the late 70s, early 80s, send us an email. I'll send you the screen grab, or you can go and check it out. It's season 2, episode 26 of The Love Boat. You can find every episode streaming on Paramount Plus. If that helps you out, it's the season finale for season 2. And just scrub through and you'll see the scene in the cabin on the Love Boat where Corey Feldman shows up. Where this sounds like a fever dream to me. Corey Feldman shows up wearing a Darth Vader mask
with Frank Costanza.
With his Frank Costanza's making out with his wife. I mean, oh my God. What a trip. That's a Bill Walton quality trip right there.
Chewie, get us out of here!
Oh. That's what we do here, folks, at Rebel Force Radio. You never know what you're going to hear. You know, you're going to get a little of this, a little of that. You're going to get Gina Carano, heavy lawsuit stuff. Then you're going to get Frank Costanza on the Love Boat with Corey Feldman wearing a Darth Vader mask. I mean,
just that description alone is way out there.
Yeah, well, if you want more Rebel Force Radio, as you heard us talking about earlier, the best way to do that is through Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio, or just head over to the rebelforceradio.com website, and you can click on the Patreon banner, and you can sign up. Various levels of membership, weekly full show video, exclusive podcasts that you can't find anywhere else, and just hanging with a great community of Star Wars fans. And you're going to be hearing a lot of those folks on our after show starting next week with Bad Batch Season 3, because if you are a Patreon member at any level, you jump to the head of the queue when it comes time to open up the phone lines. And Tyler Page, our intrepid call screener, is there, and he's got the whole list. And like Santa Claus, he's checking it twice, and he knows if you're naughty or you're a Patreon member. So check that out. Patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. If you want more Rebel Force Radio video, you can find a lot of it on YouTube, including all of the after shows for series like Bad Batch. So you might want to, and I'm not pulling a Filoni and telling you that you got to go back and watch an entire season or 5 of another show, but you might want to go back and especially watch the after show where we're breaking down maybe the last 2 episodes, or certainly that season finale, so you can refresh yourself with what is leading up to this first episode of Bad Batch season. I got to go back and do a little digging myself, refreshing myself for Bad Batch Season 3. You can follow us on our socials, Twitter, or X, Instagram, Facebook, and the official website, as I mentioned, for all things and everything Rebel Force Radio, rebelforceradio.com. We love to have you commit to us here at Rebel Force Radio by way of a podcast subscription or a follow. Love to have you do that if your podcaster of choice allows you to do so. We also love those reviews. We have one small, simple rule, please.
Make them good.
All right, that's going to do it for us. We'll see you next week. Rebel Force Radio, Bad Batch After Show, Season 3, Episodes 1, 2, and 3. It's a triple feature, live next Thursday. So we'll see you then. Very excited to have brand new Star Wars to talk about. Feels like it's been a while.
Yes.
All right. Till next week. For Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
And I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.
I can't find my Chewbacca shirt.